My father died without warning, no illness, no hospital stay, just a phone call that split my life into before and after. The doctors said it was natural causes, but that explanation never really helps. When someone disappears from your life overnight, the reason almost feels irrelevant. My parents divorced when my sister and I were young. After that, my father became someone we visited instead of lived with. Weekends, occasional holidays, long gaps filled with excuses about work. He was always working, or at least that's what he told us. After the funeral, my mother asked if I wanted anything of his. There wasn't much, just 3 boxes and 1 old suitcase. The boxes sat untouched in my apartment for days. Opening them felt like admitting he was really gone, but the suitcase bothered me. It didn't look like something you forget about. Thick leather, heavy, the corners worn smooth from years of travel. Eventually, curiosity won. Inside were things that surprised me. Old photographs I'd never seen, a vintage guitar I didn't know he owned, documents from countries he'd never mentioned visiting. And then I found a sealed envelope. No address, no stamp, just 1 word written neatly on the front. Honey. At first, I smiled sadly. I assumed it was something meant for my mother, written back when things were still good between them. I was wrong. Inside were photographs, intimate ones. Not artistic, not romantic, explicit. My stomach dropped. I felt sick, like I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. I almost stopped there, but there was also a letter. The handwriting wasn't my mother's. The tone wasn't hers either. The places mentioned didn't match anywhere our family had lived. The pet names felt unfamiliar, forced. When I looked at the photos again, I noticed details I hadn't before. A hotel room, a patterned carpet, a lamp with a chipped base, and the woman, she wasn't my mother. My hands were shaking as I folded everything back into the envelope. I wanted to believe it was just an affair. Painful, yes, but explainable. Then I noticed something that ruined that illusion. The date on the letter. It was written months before my parents officially separated. That night, sleep was impossible. I searched the woman's name online. At first, nothing came up. Then I tried adding my father's company name. That's when I found it. A missing person report. The article was old, early 1990s. The photo was grainy but unmistakable. Same smile, same birthmark near her jaw. She vanished after a business trip. No signs of struggle, no body, no leads. My father's company was listed as her last known employer contact. I felt cold all over. I took everything to the police the next day. The suitcase, the envelope, the letter, the photos. They listened carefully, asked questions, took notes. Weeks passed, then months. Nothing happened. No follow-up, no arrest, no explanation. Eventually, they told me there wasn't enough evidence to reopen the case. I never told my mother. Some secrets don't bring peace when revealed. They only destroy what's left. But sometimes late at night, I think about that suitcase, about the places my father went when he said he was working late, and every time my phone rings from an unknown number, I hesitate before answering, because I don't know what scares me more. Discovering my father was capable of something far darker than betrayal, or learning that whatever he was hiding didn't die with him. It was late on Christmas night, the kind of late where the house is warm, the lights are dim, and everyone's had just enough to drink to feel nostalgic. Old photo albums were stacked across the dining table, the thick kind. The kind families keep even when they stop talking to each other. We laughed at outdated haircuts, pointed out clothes that should have stayed buried in the past. It felt safe, familiar. Then I turned the page. The photo showed a man standing alone inside a church. He wore ceremonial religious clothing I didn't recognize. Behind him were tall stained glass windows, their colors distorted by age. At first, I smiled. I thought it was my uncle. I laughed and said, "When did you become a priest?" The room went silent. Not awkward silence, not confusion. Fear. My uncle stood up so fast, his chair scraped loudly across the floor. He grabbed the album from my hands like I'd picked up something dangerous. My aunt didn't say a word. She closed the album, pressed it against her chest, and carried it upstairs as if it didn't belong in the house at all. No one explained anything. The next morning, while coffee brewed and no one made eye contact, my aunt finally spoke. The man in the photo wasn't my uncle. It was his twin brother, a name none of them said anymore. After college, his brother joined the church. At first, everyone was proud. He believed in helping people, in protecting the innocent. Years passed. He was transferred out of state for what they called a special assignment. The family was told very little, only that the work was sensitive. When he finally quit and came home, my uncle went to see him. He wasn't the same person. He drank constantly, barely slept. His apartment was covered in notebooks, stacked on tables, shoved under furniture, filled edge to edge with handwriting. A few months later, he died alone in his bed. Official cause, heart failure. When my uncle went to collect his belongings, he found the notebooks. They weren't journals, they were confessions. His role hadn't been spiritual guidance, it was damage control. Whenever a child was abused by clergy, he was sent in, not to help the victims, but to protect the institution. He met families in private, promised financial help, warned them about ruining reputations, about what would happen if they spoke publicly. Sometimes he paid them, sometimes he threatened them, sometimes both, one family a week, sometimes more, for nearly 10 years. My uncle said reading those notebooks felt like watching someone drown in slow motion. He couldn't reconcile the brother he grew up with and the man who helped bury crimes, so he erased him. That photo stayed hidden, not because they forgave him, but because some memories are too heavy to destroy and far too dangerous to remember. For most of my life, I believed my family was normal. Not perfect, but normal. We argued over food, complained about work, showed up for holidays even when we didn't feel like it. There was nothing that suggested a missing piece. Nothing except one memory that refused to stay buried. It surfaced during a casual conversation with my sister. We were talking about childhood birthday parties, cake flavors, cheap decorations, the usual nostalgia. Then she mentioned one party from when we were very young, and suddenly I remembered something I hadn't thought about in decades. An older boy, standing near the doorway, watching us. He wasn't playing, wasn't smiling, just standing there like he didn't belong. The memory felt wrong, too sharp, too detailed. I ran through every relative in my head, every cousin, every family friend. None of them matched. When we asked our mother about it, her response was immediate. She said she didn't remember anyone like that. Final. When I asked my father later, his reaction was worse. He froze. Then after a long pause, he said quietly, "You should talk to your mother." That was the moment I realized this wasn't forgetfulness. It was deliberate silence. Weeks later, while helping my mother reorganize books, something slipped out from between the pages of an old hardcover novel. A photograph. It was him, the boy from my memory. When I showed it to her, she didn't deny it. She stared at the photo for a long time, then told me we needed to talk somewhere private. She said he was my cousin. She said he disappeared while studying at university. Not dead, not found, just gone. The family made a decision back then to erase him. No photos, no stories, no questions. She made me promise not to look any deeper. I didn't keep that promise. I went to his mother. That's when I learned the truth they were hiding. His car was found in long-term parking at an airport. Inside were his wallet, phone, and passport cover, but no boarding pass. Records later showed he had flown overseas. each flight moving closer to a war zone. Emails followed. They were cold, detached, written like they came from someone who shared his name, but not his thoughts. He wrote about purpose, about belonging, about violence like it was sacred. The final email described killing people, not with anger, not with regret, with pride. That was the last message anyone ever received from him. When his mother finished telling me everything, she said something I still can't forget. She said she doesn't avoid thinking about her son. She thinks about him every day. That's why there are no photos, because the boy she raised disappeared long before his body ever did. Opening a daycare was supposed to be the happiest thing I'd ever done. I'd spent years planning it. Licenses, inspections, endless forms. Background checks so thorough, they didn't just feel professional, they felt personal. But when it's kids, you accept the discomfort. You don't cut corners. Part of the checklist was simple, standard even. Look up the neighborhood, know what's nearby, check the public registry. I remember sitting at my laptop late one night, scrolling through the map like it was just another chore. Red dots, names, addresses, distances measured in neat little circles. Then I clicked one, mostly out of habit, and the name on the screen made my throat tighten. Same last name as mine. Not a common name either. For a minute, I tried to force it into being nothing. Coincidence, different family, just bad luck. But I couldn't let it go. So I called my uncle. The second I said the name, he didn't ask what I was talking about. He didn't say, "That can't be us." He just said, very quietly, "Who told you?" I explained how I'd found it, the registry, the map, the address. There was a pause long enough that I checked my phone to make sure the call hadn't dropped. Then he said, "I'm coming over." When he arrived, he didn't sit down at first. He stood in my kitchen like he was waiting for someone to walk in behind him. Finally, he said it. The man was family, convicted decades ago. They disowned him, cut him off, made an agreement that no one younger would ever know his name. He was supposed to be gone, my uncle said. I told my uncle the obvious thing. If this was true, I couldn't open the daycare there. I'd find another building, another street, another neighborhood. He stopped me immediately. "No," he said, "you stay." I stared at him. "Are you serious?" He nodded like it was already decided. Then he said, "We'll handle it." He didn't say it like someone calling a lawyer. He said it like someone taking out the trash. He left, and for the next few days, nothing happened. Then about a week later, I saw a short news item, barely a segment. A registered offender in our county was missing. They flashed a photo for less than 2 seconds, but it was the same name. I called my uncle immediately. He answered like he'd been expecting it. When I confronted him, he chuckled, like I was overreacting. "We just talked to him," he said. "Scared him straight. He won't be back." I asked where he went. My uncle didn't answer. Instead, he said, "Focus on your opening." I tried to report it, not as an accusation, just as concern. But the registry never updated. No new address, no relocation notice, no arrest. I opened the daycare anyway. Parents smile at me every morning and hand me their children like it's the most natural thing in the world. But sometimes late at night, when the building is quiet and I'm locking up alone, I think about that word, handle. And I wonder if my family didn't just scare someone into leaving. I wonder if they erased him completely. Some problems disappear on their own. Others are made to disappear. And once you understand the difference, you can't unlearn it.